As free agents begin to sign, the pitching market looks to be taking at least some resemblance of a shape, and Tarek Skubal's price tag might just keep climbing.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, December 1st, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome all. Happy Monday. As we enter December, we have a lot to discuss. I want to end the show by actually talking about old friend Matt Manning going and signing with the KBO. We're also going to talk about winter meetings beginning just next week. We'll talk about the Tigers re-signing Tanner Rainey to a minor league deal. We'll talk about Tigers pre-Arb players getting bonus money over the holiday. But we're going to start off the show by talking about the pitching price market, I guess, the pitching market and what the price tag for not only starters, but I guess relievers, just kind of everyone in general appears to be. This is not to say that the market is completely set. There are big names that will determine a lot of that going forward and will determine, what the projected salaries are for a lot of these guys and whatnot. But we are already seeing some relatively big name players sign contracts with teams, and they're not cheap. And I think that it's important, as we always just kind of have the Tarek Skubal situation in the back of our heads throughout not only this winter, but going through next year. It's important to kind of recalibrate every once in a while and be like, okay, well, this was the number that was thrown out there like a year ago, right? Was 400 mil. Some people scoffed at that. Some people said that that was correct, et cetera, et cetera. There was two different reporters that were arguing about the discrepancy between the Tigers offer and what Skubal's asking price was, some as high as like hundreds of millions of dollars. Some say it's not that much. All of this we have talked about plenty over the last, just month really, but obviously dating back to this time last year as well. So I want to start with Ryan Helsley to the Baltimore Orioles. The reason we're starting with him is because I think it's like the neatest contract, just the cleanest of these two deals we're going to talk about. But also, and far more importantly, the Tigers expressed interest in Ryan Helsley. The weird part was, if you listen to the episode last week where we broke down that interest and what from the Tigers' perspective, why this made sense, why it didn't, etc. The Tigers wanted to convert Ryan Helsley into a starting pitcher, which he has not done since he was in the minor leagues. Baltimore Orioles sign him for 2 years, $28 million, and there's an opt-out after the first year. Sounds like it'll be as a reliever. And not just as a reliever, but as the ninth inning, go-to save situation reliever in Baltimore. The immediate question that I get flooded with after, Helsley gets signed is, how do you feel? Would you, if you were the Tigers, would you have done this? Did you want him to be a starter, et cetera, et cetera? Like I said, we kind of broke him down a little bit last week. So I won't, regurgitate the same information there, but I am glad the Tigers did not pay more than that, 14 AAV for 2 years with an opt-out, and make him a starter. If they did one or the other, I'd kind of be like game. Not, I wouldn't be throwing a parade down Woodward, but like I'd see the vision. Okay, you get him for a value contract, and you're going to try him as a starter. Why not? Or He wants to be a reliever. You need a reliever. We're going to pay him big bucks to make sure that he is closing games for the Detroit Tigers for this foreseeable future. If either one of those things happened in a vacuum, I honestly wouldn't be too upset. If both of them happened, right? If I would not have been pleased if Helsley was signed by the Tigers as a starting pitcher for like 20 mil a year, right? That's kind of what I'm getting at. Also, I'm sick and my voice, I've been hacking up a lung all day. So if just bear with me here. We ball. We're here. We're ready. But 14 a year, it's interesting. Like, that isn't nothing. But Baltimore wants to try to get their, I don't even know how to say this like nicely, but their organization like back on track. I don't even think that's like a slanderous thing. I feel like the fan base probably feels similarly. And a lot of that has to do with the success or stability, maybe is the word, of the back end of their bullpen. A lot of those pieces that, 3 years ago, I almost just coughed up everything. So that was really close, but I'm him. But you look at that bullpen from, 2 or 3 years ago, you have, I mean, even for a hot minute, right? Gregory Soto was their old friend, but the two like pillars at the back end have either been hurt and or traded for a long majority of the last few years. Gregory Soto not there anymore. Like they had a bunch of really hard throwing back end relievers to pair with a young core offensively. And this is not to omit everyone else from blame either over there, right? Like their offense, Adley has not hit really much of anything over the last, calendar year and a half, maybe even going back like 2 years. Their starting rotation has been abysmal, and they just traded away Grayson Rodriguez for a bat. Like there is, I mean, there's a lot there that has to be addressed. And I think that the back end of their bullpen is obviously a priority this winter. And that's why they feel comfortable giving 14 mil. And from Helsley's perspective, he just had one of the worst seasons of his major league career. And he now is guaranteed 14 mil to be a reliever. If he still sucks, then he's on the hook for 14 more the following year, even though he will have back-to-back poor seasons in a row. And if he's really good, then he can opt out and try to get that big money closer contract for multiple years. So good for Helsley. I think it's good for Baltimore. I really like Helsley. I think the profile translates. I think this half of a season with the Mets was kind of more of an anomaly than anything else. But what position does that put the Tigers in, right? They need to add a starting pitcher. Still, they have not done that yet. And obviously they need to add multiple relievers. And if we're looking at market value, this is 14 mil for a reliever who had a rough season. Right? He was horrible in the second half, once the trade happened. And he's not exactly like a young prospect anymore. And is getting 28 mil over 2 years guaranteed if he wants it. So that is why I not only is it important, again, just because like the Tigers expressed interest in him. So are we upset or not, because of this? But I think the market value is the biggest talking point here. And that leads us into a contract that the Toronto Blue Jays gave Dylan Cease. That is probably far more of a talking point in terms of starting pitcher contract than Helsley. We'll do that right after this. First, though, got to talk to you all about our friends over at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. There's one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what making live bets with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets on the action as it unfolds. Every drive, every momentum shift, and every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, right? Like a receiver gets hot, defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. There's live spreads and money lines that you can adjust instantly, player props, and update as guys heat up. You can be next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, everybody. Welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Thank you for bearing with me. My throat is on fire. I'm not having a good time, but I am having a good time because you decided to tune in today. I appreciate you all greatly. Thanks for making us your first listen. As always, we'll be back tomorrow, continuing our off-season conversations. Winter meetings looms. It is a week away as you listen to this. So we're going to have a lot of conversations this week that will play a big factor or big talking points as we head into what usually is the busiest week or two of the offseason. So thanks for tuning in and making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Talked about Ryan Helsley a lot in segment 1, kind of how that contract maybe affected the market a little bit. If you follow the game of baseball and you are aware of the Dylan Cease contract, then you knew the second that you clicked on this video that this was going to be a talking point surrounding this conversation as well. And that's Dylan Cease getting a $210 million deal over 7 years from the Toronto Blue Jays. That is $30 million a season if it's spread out evenly, which we know is not a guarantee these days. But you're talking about 30 AAV if it is even year in and year out. That is unbelievable to me. Like, I look at Skubal and I think, you beautiful, beautiful man, you're about to get $1 trillion. Like, and that's not supposed to be, disrespectful to Dylan Cease. He obviously a really solid pitcher who has thrown a lot of innings and started a lot of games at the major league level over the last 5 or 6 years. Has had a couple of, Cy Young contender caliber seasons. But you look at the year he just had, and you look at that contract, and you look at his age, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know, man. Cease had one of the least productive years of his Major League Baseball career and is going into his age 30 season. I think his birthday is just a few days after Christmas. Now, this last year was not good. ERA over 4.5. Still had a lot of swing and miss. Still gets strikeouts at a pretty decent rate. And has 2 top 5 Cy Young finishes prior to 2025. And one of them was just 2 seasons ago. Like, he's a good pitcher. Don't get me wrong. That doesn't make the contract any less, like, optically just kind of, whoa. Like, I didn't see that one coming. When we look at, contract projections and predictions from beat writers and websites and formulas and whatever, I'd be pressed to find anyone who thought Cease was going to get $210 million. Now, the reason we bring this up is because I believe it's a testament to the starting pitching market and what we can kind of expect in it going forward. Like, seriously, if that is the market, and again, $14 million for Helsley, who didn't have a great year this year, isn't nothing either. So if this is truly how the market is going to value, pitchers that can provide innings, then Skubal getting less than $350 million would become like, there's no way it's going to be less than that. And 10 years probably smacked onto that. So you're getting 35 a year for 10 years. Like, we'll see. And again, that's not me saying that's a prediction. I think if this is the market, that's kind of a low end. We will see, but I think it certainly adds a wrinkle into the already very, very intriguing Tarek Skubal saga, if you will. So this is the market. And I know I've, take a drink every time I say market, and you don't know where you are. I promise I'll stop saying it. But like, this is what has been set, right? Like, this is, there's some people that hear those numbers and they go, wow, like, those are overpays, right? Those are all overpays. So-and-so isn't worth that much, whatever. At some point, this just is what the market value is. Like this just is the price for that level of production. It's not an overpay. If 29 other teams agree that that's what he's worth, then that's just the market for the player. So you, as a front office and as an ownership group, you got to get with the times and go get some players that are productive and are going to cost you a pretty penny, or sell the team, dude. Like that's where we're at. This is the price of a player and a good player. And this is obviously in the context that we're discussing mostly over the next calendar year is this is the price of Tarek Skubal. He's going to cost a lot of money. I saved it. He's going to cost a lot of money. Not that that's, news to anybody tuning in. Okay. Let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about the Detroit Tigers pre-arbitration players that received bonuses. Evan Petzold of the Freep, who we praise and talk about all the time on this show, put out a great piece that kind of highlighted the exact dollar amounts for everybody and what goes into the decision. But essentially in the last CBA, so what was that, 2021, whenever, like right around like the COVID, and then there was the lockout through spring training and then whatever. In the last CBA, one of the additions was a $50 million bonus pool that gave performance bonuses to players that are pre-arbitration eligible. We talked about that a lot over the last couple of weeks as arbitration and non-tender deadlines, and whatnot. So I won't dive into the specifics of that just because we've already talked about it a lot. But Dylan Dingler, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, Colt Keith, Reese Olson, and Winfield Perez all receive bonuses. Dylan Dingler leading the pack at $549,351 of bonuses. Again, Evan of the Freep, Evan Petzold, beautifully kind of highlights what goes into all that. If you get certain awards, I'm sure the Gold Glove was a factor. Well, I know it was a factor, but how many votes you get on certain awards, where you finish in WAR even matters, right? Like the MLB's calculation and formula for WAR. So Dylan Dingler at the top, Winfield Perez at the bottom with $219,286. Everybody else between that. Dylan Dingler was, according to Petzold, one of fewer than 30 players that received over $500,000 in bonuses. I think it was 27 or 26 players total had their bonuses be in that price range. It's always good to see, obviously good productive players, and not only for your team, but also get compensated, like just for like purely performance. I think that stuff matters. And in the grand scheme of things, context is important, right? There's some guys making, $40 million a year, but for the guys that are pre-arb and are getting the league minimum every year until they're arbitration eligible, that obviously I don't have to tell the world that like $250,000 is a nice bump and a nice bonus that they receive. The player in the pre-arbitration pool that made the most money this season, you can all guess it. It's not too hard. Paul Skeens. This is just contextually, right? Like Dylan Dingler was one of the 25 or 30 highest paid players from this bonus pool, and he made just over $500,000. Paul Skeens made $3.5 million because obviously won a Cy Young among a plethora of other achievements from this calendar year. Tanner Rainey signed to a minor league deal by the Detroit Tigers. It has an invite to spring training, a non-roster invite, so obviously he is not on the 40-man roster. If he were to make the team out of camp, he would receive $1.3 million as his salary. Yeah, I mean, sure. I have no issues or qualms with this. Like he's 32 right now. He'll be 33 next year. His birthday, actually, as I was doing show prep, I believe his birthday is on Christmas. So there you go. Shout out Tanner Rainey. But he'll be 33 next season. He's a righty. He's a depth arm. He's had like 3 ERA level production in AAA. His last 2 stints at the major leagues have not been very productive. He's not on the 40-man roster. I don't really care. Clearly, they like something about him, and he likes the organization, and he can stay as a depth. Several injuries happen in the bullpen. Who are we going to call Ghostbusters and Tanner Rainey? So that is the latest signing at the time of this recording, at least from your Detroit Tigers organization. Let's talk about Matt Manning, old friend, and then winter meetings that start next week. We will do that right after this. First, though, I'm going to talk to y'all about our friends over at Game Time. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. The World Cup is coming up back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it is going to be absolutely massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That is why Game Time, the Game Time app, is clutch. Finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging tickets. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You just pull up the app, and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups, compare seat views, you pick a game, tap a section, and you have your tickets locked in within minutes. There's no confusion and no hunting for fine print. Prices include fees up front, which is my favorite part that I tell you all the time. There's no last-second surprises at checkout. The price you see is actually the price you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers as I take my behind to bed. We are talking about a plethora of news from over the long weekend. I hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving with yourself or your family. However you spent it, I hope it was exactly as you pleased. The next piece of news I want to talk about is from an old friend, and that would be Matt Manning. I am wishing him nothing but the best. Just could not figure it out here. Went to Philly last year. Philly's organization was almost solely in the minor leagues throughout that year and has now signed a contract with the KBO, which for those who don't know is the Korean Baseball League. For those of us who are real, I guess, like baseball sickos, you will remember the KBO as the league during COVID in 2020. It was the only professional baseball league in the world that was playing at one point that summer when the whole world shut down. And so me and a lot of people in my friend group and family and whatnot, we were nowhere to go. So we were staying up and watching KBO baseball at 4 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. And they have actually produced, I think that was really big for them just in terms of eyes on their league, but they've actually produced a handful of really solid major league players over the last, probably since then, over the last 5 years. And they've obviously had some before that as well, but it seems to be a lot more consistent, and the level of play in the KBO seems to have increased kind of a decent amount, and a lot more major leaguers that can't find a contract with an MLB team are now going to the KBO to kind of redefine their skills, work on some stuff, play there for a year, and then get out. I know Dixon Machado played in the KBO a few years back and then returned, got signed by the Giants, got a second chance of playing pro ball over here. Like there are a handful of stories like that, and hopefully Matt Manning can become another KBO success story. I can't say that I watched a ton of him in AAA with Philadelphia this past year, so maybe this isn't up to date anymore, but when he was a Tiger, man, he just didn't have secondary stuff. And that's not even just it. Like, it'd be one thing if he had that and he had an electric, incredible fastball. Not the case. He had a fastball that didn't get hit a ton, to his credit. But in the same breath, I mean, it was one of the most inconsistent pitches. It would drive you nuts, dude. He'd throw it 97, 98 one inning, and then he'd come out and throw it 91 the following. And you're like, what is happening? And that, unfortunately, was just kind of a thorn in his side. I don't know whether it's mechanics, not being able to repeat them, if it's situational or whatever. But that, an inconsistent fastball paired with really no secondary stuff. The slider was ineffective. The curveball we heard a ton about when he was coming up through the minor league system, and everybody praised, like how great the curveball is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. By the time he got to the majors, he didn't even have one. He used a splitter changeup type thing in spring training 2 years ago. And we were like, oh, maybe like this is a new pitch, turning the page. No, the second that the regular season started, he stopped throwing it almost altogether. So yeah, like it's obviously been, I'm sure, frustrating for him, but I really do wish him nothing but the best. He was, I think the fortunate thing that he has going for him is he is still only 27 years old, and lots of players, as I mentioned, have gone overseas to Japan or Korea. Honestly, there's a handful of leagues in Europe as well, and kind of tried to redefine their game and work their way back. So yeah, hopefully it'll be good for him. Hopefully in a year or two, we're talking about, him with a revamped repertoire and kind of reinserting himself into the free agency mix or whatnot. But this guy was a former top 25 prospect in all of baseball. He was one of the best prospects in the Tigers organization. He was a first round pick out of high school in 2016. And now we're about to be 10 years removed from his draft year. I really hope he figures it out and honestly, like, just has a great experience in Korea. Like that, those kind of stories are so cool to me. And I hope that he figures it out. I'll be rooting for him. Next week, winter meetings begin on December 7th. Now, 7th is the Sunday. Nothing really happens on the Sunday. That's like everyone comes into town. You don't see anything really. Then, honestly, the last few years have been super hit or miss on just seeing anything in winter meetings, period. So we'll see what happens there. But a lot is going to happen, even if there's not a ton of moves. You got the Rule 5 draft. You have the draft lottery. There's, rumors just pouring out of everybody's ears and mouths while they're over there. It is one of the most fun weeks of the year. The Tigers, or of the offseason, certainly. The Tigers have been quiet so far in the offseason. I know that some people roll their eyes at that, but like, I don't know. Pretty much all teams except for like one or two have been really quiet so far. We're still, anything pre-winter meetings is just like there's not usually a ton going on. So yeah, maybe the Jays and Orioles omitted from that statement, but the Tigers not doing anything yet doesn't like make me upset. If we get to March and they haven't done anything, then we'll rightly criticize. So yeah, almost everyone in free agency is still available, and the Tigers, in theory, have money to spend. So we'll see what happens. And like I said, we'll obviously have a ton of conversations throughout the week in regards to winter meetings and what we can expect from your Detroit Tigers. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back tomorrow talking about what I just laid out, so I won't repeat myself. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.